question. Where did all the elves go? Recently, the fantasy genre has known an immense boom, like within the last, I think, 5 to 10 years. There's just been so much stuff coming out in the fantasy genre, especially in literature. And being the fantasy nut that I am, that makes me particularly happy. But I had this in my collection, and I wanted to make it a part of an international book series that I want to start doing, like looking at international novels that get translated into French but not into English, because if you've seen any of my like international videos before, you probably know that this makes me particularly angry. But when I started reading this, I thought, because this was published in 2005, I think, and I thought, it's called The Elves? And I was like, where did the elves go in fantasy? Because, yeah, we've got a lot of fantasy right now. Fantasy everywhere, all kind of genres, but no elves. Like, no elves, no orcs, no Tolkien-esque creatures. And that makes me sad. I like elves. I really do. So, yeah, reading this made me kind of happy. This is The Elves by Bernhard Hennen. It's a German novel, so this is a German writer. This is the first book in a trilogy, and originally I wanted to make a whole video, like a video about the whole trilogy, but when I finished reading it, I ended up with about 4 pages of notes, so it's going to be a bit longer. It's going to be a really long video if I like have 4 pages of notes for each book. I've only read the first one so far. So I'm taking you to German fantasy with The Elves by Bernhard Hennen. So the book starts with a character called Mandred and his companions in the human world, and they are hunting a boar-headed creature in a forest at night. So they've heard like an old man complaining about this creature that's like been terrorizing the forest, so they go and see if they can find it. The creature attacks them, kills Mandred's friends, and he ends up wounded and taking refuge within a stone circle where the boar-headed creature can't seem to come and get him. After that, we have a chapter in the Elves world where 2 elves, Faradin and Neuramon, are trying to seduce a lady elf called Norel. Turns out they've been trying to do this for 20 years, and Norel can't choose between the 2 of them. She likes them both equally. We get quite an interesting description of both these characters. So Faradin is described as like the perfect elf prince. He's got blonde hair, he's really strong, he's really good at fighting, he's very poetic. Neuramon, on the other hand, is more of a, I guess, not really a renegade, but he's not very appreciated in the elves world, because in this world, when the elves die, their souls get reincarnated in a new elf, as it were. So they don't remember their past, like their past lives, but they are the soul of this person. It's a bit weird. And basically this keeps on happening every time they die until they find a purpose in life. And Neuramon is the elf that has been reincarnated the most. So he has never found his purpose in any of his past lives. And for that reason, he's looked down upon by the other elves. They don't really like him. Norel likes him, but apparently she's the only one. Yeah, at the end of this chapter, they both get called away to the Queen's Court. Then Mandred wakes up under the shade of a massive, great big oak tree, being cured of his wounds by said oak tree and a Cernunnos. Points for having a Cernunnos in this book. You don't see them very often, so that made me pleased. He's a really kind of grumpy character, but points for that anyway. Then he is visited by a centaur. Again, points for centaurs, not enough of those. Who tells him that the elf queen has summoned him to her court. So he takes Mandred all the way to the court. So Mandred's kind of knew about the elves, that they were these legendary creatures, but now he's in their world, he kind of has proof of their existence. He's a bit weirded out by this. So the centaur takes him to a bridge, and then he's met there by the first elf that Mandred gets to see. So this elf warrior called Olwain. Mandred just takes the piss. Like, Mandred really looks down on Olwain because he fights with a sword and he's very slim and not big and strong. And like, Mandred is really arrogant, and he makes a big thing about fighting with a battle axe. He doesn't like swords. He thinks swords are for girls. Like, real men fight with battle axes. So he really has a go at Olwain, who ends up essentially kicking his ass in a fight. Upon meeting the queen, Mandred blames her for the creature attacking his men, because this creature had a boar's head but a human body. And being as Mandred has seen many creatures like the Cernunnos, like the centaur, he's seen fauns, that all are part human, part animal. He believes that this creature came from the Elves realm and blames the queen for attacking his land. However, the queen has no idea what this creature is or where it came from. So she offers Mandred to lead the elves' hunt to go and kill this creature, in exchange for which he has to give her his firstborn child. So happens that his wife is pregnant. So, okay. So he agrees to this and leads the hunt, which also includes Faradin and Neuramon, into the human world to kill the beast. Once they get there, they hunt, they track down this creature. However, it overpowers all of them. There's 8 members of the hunt. It ends up capturing Mandred, Faradin, and Neuramon in a cave that it seals with an ice wall. And this isn't the kind of ice wall you can just run at uttering a war cry. They really trapped in there. They do, however, manage to defeat this creature and kill it. But in the elf world, however, Norael, the elf lady, is visited in a dream by Neuramon, and they sleep together. So apparently that's all it took for her to like make a choice between Faradin and Neuramon, one of them to like just go in and sleep with her. So they sleep together in this dream, and then it skips to a year later where she's giving birth. So she gives birth to this baby, which is visited by the elf queen, who declares it the son of a demon. And apparently this boar-headed man-like creature in the human world was in fact a demon from the ancient world, and somehow disguised itself as Neuramon, visited Norael in a dream and impregnated her. I don't know either. The queen declares that this baby is evil and must be killed. However, Norael cannot see anything evil within her child, so she decides to hide it in the human world. And for that, the queen sends her into exile by using a spell contained within an hourglass that she then breaks, dispersing every single grain of sand which contained the spell, making it impossible for anyone to bring her back. Meanwhile, back in the cave, because Mandred, Faradin, and Neuramon are still stuck in there, somebody breaks the ice from the outside and they are freed. However, they find out that from their point of view, it's been 5 days that they've been stuck in this cave, but for the rest of the world, human and elf worlds, it has been 30 years. Again, I don't know, but okay. So Mandred goes back to his village to find that his wife died of grief after the elf queen came to collect their son, and that the children he knew are now grown men. Like, you know, time has gone by, things have happened. So he returns to the elf world with Faradin and Neuramon. They find out that their beloved has been sent away into exile, that her son is somewhere in the human world, and the queen tells them that if they want to bring her back, they need to go and kill her son. So they summon Elf Hunt number 2, which also contains Olwain this time, and they head off back into the human world to try and find Norael's son. Upon returning to the Elf Queen's court, Mandred meets his son, who is now a grown man, almost as old as he is. His name is Alvadas, and he has been raised by the elves, so he... And again, Mandred is like, oh god, he doesn't have a beard, so he's not a real man, and he tries to get him to learn how to fight with a battle axe, which he doesn't seem to want to do, but okay. 3 years go by and they finally find him. They find him in this city where he is working as a healer. So he's a monk. He belongs to this religious organization, and he also heals people for free, and he's really good at it. However, they realize that the healing powers he has on humans are actually fatal for elves. So he can't heal anyone when there's elves around, or else they die, and he can't heal the elves. So Faradin and Neuramon, I think it's Neuramon who goes to see him and tells him what his origins are, and he's like completely freaked out because he really looks like Norel. Norel's son is called Guillaume in my version, bearing in mind that this is the French translation of the German, so he might be called something different. Guillaume is the name for William in French, so I'm going to call him Guillaume. I'm just going to go with Guillaume. So Guillaume's a bit like surprised to find out about his origins. He thought that the gods had given him the powers he had. So yeah, he's a bit miffed to find out that he's actually the son of a demon. Faradin and Neuramon don't want to kill him. They want to bring him back to the queen and show her that he is not an evil person. In fact, he does very good things. He heals people. But that doesn't happen because then the city gets invaded by an army who need Guillaume to heal their king. And it all goes terribly wrong. There's a massive, great big chase through the city. So while Neuramon and Faradin are fighting this massive, great big army, Mandred, Olawain, and the rest of the elves are just like chilling. Like they're just waiting outside. And like, what's going on? I don't know. They see the army enter the city, but they don't really do anything. They don't think anything of this. Like 100 soldiers turn up, and they're like, oh yeah, like it's just a normal day. And Mandred's like, maybe we should go and help them. Like maybe we should go and like help out. They might be in trouble. And Olawain's like, nah, just leave it. Like it'll be fine. I mean, he's a bit more aggressive than that, but like, what? So Mandred ends up convincing his son to go along with them and help Faradin and Neuramon. And like he utilizes his kind of cunning skills to enter the city, despite all the soldiers. What I find really odd about this is his son actually accuses him of being selfish and like not sticking up for his fellow like companions, but the whole point of him going into the city is to save 2 of his companions. So I don't really understand Alvadas's logic here. Like he and his dad have this really odd relationship. Like they've spent 3 years together, but it's like they've only just met. Like it's really odd. But anyway, so eventually they find Faradin and Neuramon. They find out that Guillaume has been killed by the soldiers, and eventually the other elves turn up and help them all escape. At which point they go back to Mandred's village, and Alvadas decides to stay there. And that's the end of the novel. Reading this really felt like reading an epic saga like Das Nibelungenlied, the story of Siegfried and Brünnhilde. If you've seen Wagner's Ring Cycle, that's what it's about. If you have seen Wagner's Ring Cycle, well done, because it's like 13 hours long. Yeah, and there even are chapters. I think there's 3 chapters that are written exactly as if they were a saga within this world. So they are the saga contained in the library of Fernstan, where Mandred is originally from. It's interesting because it paints a very different story about these characters. The elves, Faradin and Neuramon, have different names, and they're basically interchangeable. They're just like 2 elf princes that follow Mandred around, and it really kind of focuses on these epic heroes. So there's one about Mandred, There's one about Alvadas, where he has to fight a troll. So we don't actually know within the context of the novel whether or not this actually happens, but it's part of the saga. And also the one about them being freed from the cave. So I really like that. What I found unfortunate was the writing style in itself, because it's fine to write something like an epic saga, but to kind of incorporate the saga chapters within a story that's already written like a saga, I found a bit odd. I would have found it better had it been like written like a normal like fantasy novel, and like interspersed with more like saga chapters to kind of give us a contrast of, well, this is what the fantasy novel is, this is what the saga looks like within the context of their world. Aside from that, I thought the battle scenes were pretty good. The fight scenes, especially the at the end when they're in the city where Guillaume is, when the army attacks them, like there's this whole great big long chase and battle with Faradin and Neuramon where they're trying to devise ways of defeating 100 soldiers when there's only 2 of them. And there's a lot of details at that point. I think that's the moment when we get the most details, because you've got the monks in the monastery where Guillaume lives. They break one of the windows and they're all like, oh my god, that's bad luck. And so you get a lot of kind of context and descriptions, but it's not, that's really lacking in this novel. And I thought it was really a shame. I really appreciated the diversity of magical creatures in this world. You've got a Kerninos, you've got the centaur, you've got the ancient demon, you've got fauns, you've got magical trees, and obviously elves, you know, like actual real proper elves, as in incredibly lovely, very efficient snobs elves, like they should be, and that's so nice. The world building, though, like, sagas are more about heroic deeds and not so much world building. So I get why the focus was more on the actions of the characters rather than the world that they live in. The Elves world is pretty good, but like there's even a map at the beginning, which is always appreciated. But apart from that, like all the time they spend in the human world, like he could have made something about that, especially as the elves are really fascinated. Like they want to learn all the human languages, and they're fascinated by the diversity of human villages and the fact that they're all different and they all have different cultures. And that's just kind of a very short paragraph, and nothing really is made of it. So I thought that was very sad. Guillaume at the end, what was that about? Because they spend 3 years looking for this guy, and then there's this massive, great big battle at the end, and then he just dies. So and that's it. They just go home with nothing, basically. They're back to square one. Norel is still in exile. Well, I guess they did what they set out to do originally, because they were supposed to kill him and now he's dead, so I don't know. Faradin's trying to reunite all the grains of sand from the sand glass to try and break the spell and bring her back. Okay. And I don't even understand why Norel, like, why they are so obsessed with her. Because, like, Faradin is in love with Norel because she is the reincarnation of his lost love who died 700 years earlier in a war. That is his only reason for being interested in her. As far as Neuramon goes, I guess it's because she's the only person who actually likes him. But their whole world revolves around her. And it kind of gives them this special relationship because they do respect each other a lot, because they know how much Norel cares about either of them. So they're going to protect each other because they don't want to hurt her. But why can't she just make a friggin' decision? Like, personally, I would have gone with Neuramon. I think he's the way better candidate of the two. He's kinder. He just came across... I just had a better vibe about him. Faradin's more of an arrogant, like, snob. Like, I guess how elves are supposed to be. And I guess it kind of makes sense because he's older. Despite the fact that Neuromon's soul is older than his. Like, I don't know how this works. And that's another problem I have with this novel. How does the magic work? What's the magic system? What are we dealing with? Because how did they get stuck in that cave for 30 years? Like, for everyone else it was 30 years, but for them it was just 5 days. How did that work? How did the demon get into the Elves world and pretend to be Neuromon? And why Neuromon? I guess because Faradin was wounded at this point, so I guess he was the only one. But how did that work? We don't know. We never find out, which is frustrating because I want answers. I don't just take magic for granted. I don't even entirely understand how the elves being reincarnated system is supposed to work, because like they talk about this a lot. Like when one of them dies, they start worrying, like when they're in the cave, oh, if they're in the human world, do they still get reincarnated? But the thing is, I'm not quite sure whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing to be reincarnated, because obviously when they lose someone, they're like, oh, we'll find them again in another elf's body, like Faradin with Norel, which is weird and creepy, because she has no idea who she was in a past life, so yeah. But Neuromon is like hated because he's been reincarnated so many times, so like at what point do they accept that they're not going to be reincarnated again and that they're going to just go to elf heaven or whatever? It's not very clear. I really wanted to say to Faradin and Neuromon to just forget about Norel, because she is boring and bland. I really don't get why they want to be with her so badly. Like, Faradin, okay, like, you go with her, like, you take her. And Norel has this protege called Obele, who is also the reincarnation of, like, a great heroine from, like, elf history who killed a dragon. And she is such a better character. Like, she only has, like, a few scenes, but she's so just nice and kind and sweet. So I'm hoping that Neuromon is gonna end up going with her, because I think they really would make a nice couple. Or failing that, just forget about the women and hook up with each other, because you guys make a really good team all the way through this book, and you know each other. They've spent so much time together at this point. Just forget about Norel. Just like go out with each other. Alvadas, the son of Mandred. We need to talk about Mandred. Like, I really didn't like his character at all. I don't entirely understand. Like, I do get some aspects of him, because like he grew up, he's lived his entire life, 30 plus years, in this tiny little village where there's like 20 people. So he has a very kind of fixed and narrow idea of what the world is supposed to be. But you'd think, like, having spent so much time with the elves, he would learn maybe eventually to appreciate them a bit more, and like eventually think, well, actually, okay, they fight with swords and not battle axes, but they're still pretty good at it, and just stop basically looking down on them. Because even like when he's stuck in the cave with Faradin and Neuromon, he decides that these are good guys and he wants to befriend them. Okay, so now they leave the cave, they're all friends. It's only been 5 days, but what the hell. But despite that, you know, he goes back there, and there's even this part here where he says that he would have wanted a better welcome into the Queen's court, but he was in no place to understand the elves world. So I thought, finally, about more than halfway through, actually, about 3/4 through, this character is developing. Character development, nice. He now doesn't look down on the elves anymore. But actually, no, because later on he keeps kind of bullying his son into being more like a human. Like, why can't you just accept that he grew up in the elves world and that you didn't raise him, and now he's in his 30s? You can't just come along and be like, oh, I'm your dad and you need to obey me. Because that's what he's like. You know, he's like, I'm your dad, so I tell you what to do and you do as I say, even though, like, he doesn't know who you are. He's only just met you, and he probably doesn't care about you. And also, like, they have this really odd relationship. They go on for 3 years they spend together, and as I say, it feels like no time had gone by between when they met at the Queen Elf's court and like the end of the novel when Alvadas is finally like, maybe my dad's not such a bad person, like he's a pretty decent fighter. But Mandred is such an appalling character. Like he just gets drunk all the time. Like the elves don't understand how he can, like, because his life is so short, why he would waste it drinking, which kind of amused me because I thought, well, Mandred's probably thinking, well, okay, I only live once, right? You know, I'm gonna go drinking. But he also goes whoring, and Alvadas really kind of hates him for that. And the thing is, like, I don't see how Mandred wants Alvadas to respect him and look up to him as his father if he's going to behave in this way. Because, like, he's grown up with the elves, so all he's probably thinking at this point is my real dad is a monster. Like, he's this horrible person who doesn't respect me, who's trying to push, like, this axe on me, and who's trying to, like, who just goes off and gets drunk and goes with all these prostitutes and then comes back and tries to give me a lesson on how I'm supposed to live my life. Like, what the fuck, dude? So yeah, I really didn't like Mandred as a character. I think at the end of the novel, because he doesn't go back to his village, he leaves Alvadas in his village, he kind of convinces him to stay, which I don't really understand why he does, but like there's this girl there and he's like, oh, she's pretty, but they've only been there like a couple of days, but I don't know, I guess he's probably thinking if it takes 20 years to seduce a woman in the elf world, then I might as well just go with this girl in the village, at least it's quicker. I don't know. So Mandred at the end does, I guess, there is kind of character development there because he does realise that he has been away from this world for 30 years, he no longer belongs in it. So he goes into the elves world. There's a scene I really liked with Guillaume when Neuramon is telling him about his origins. Guillaume says that fate makes him guilty even though he is innocent. Like, all he's ever done is want to heal people and help people, but he is the reason his mother was sent into exile, and he is also the son of a demon, and also the one who's he actually does because of his powers, one of the elves dies, so he's also responsible for one of their numbers' death. So he says my fault seems to be that I exist and that I'm alive, and that's exactly why Neuramon says that he won't kill him, because he isn't guilty. He didn't do anything wrong. He just exists in a world where he wasn't supposed to, basically, and I thought that was a really nice scene. So yeah, this is the first novel in the trilogy, so I've got book 2 waiting. I'll see how this pans out, what happens with Norel, and I hope that that she should, like, yeah, she should go with Faradin, and Neuramon, just forget about her and go with Oberlay, because Oberlay's way better. So overall, I have mixed feelings about this. I liked the fantasy aspect of it, the good old saga, Tolkien-esque elves, you know, magical creatures, fantasy element, because fantasy today seems to be all about magicians and dragons, which I'm not complaining about. I really enjoy that, but there's a lot of that and not enough of this. So thank you, Bernhard Hennen, for bringing us back to what fantasy originally was back in the day. But it also has faults, like the magic. What the fuck is wrong with the magic? Like, how does it work? How does any of it work? It just, I want answers. I want answers to this. And the characters, a lot of things that I didn't like. The writing style was odd. I think it could have been better. There could have been more descriptions. There could have been more just the characters, giving them more personalities, because they are basically empty husks that are all interchangeable. Like, the elves are pretty much interchangeable. I know they're supposed to be pretentious snobs, but you can still give them personalities as pretentious snobs. Like, that is possible. Mandred's the only one that has a real personality, and he sucks as a character. Like, he is just a horrible. Like, I get he's supposed to come across as being really kind of gruff and brutish compared to the elves, but he is just as like pretentious and snobby as they are, just in a different way. So I don't know if was intended or not, to show like, okay, it's not because you're like part of the elite and this beautiful magical world that you're the only ones who are allowed to be snobs. Like, you can still be a snob even if you've lived all your life in a fishing village with 20 people. But it's a very different kind of snob, but a snob nonetheless. So I don't really get why he had to be that way. Like, he can be proud. Like, he's allowed to be proud of his origins. He's allowed to be proud of his village, but he doesn't need to be such a snob. So I don't know. Yeah, didn't like the main character, but so yeah, like I said, first book in a trilogy. I guess I will see what happens next. So I will be back for book 2, which I have right here. So book 1 is the Elves Hunt. This one is called the Alb Star. So I'll see you soon for this one. And on that note, thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave me a comment, tell me what you think. And don't hesitate to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.